Good morning, good afternoon to everybody, and welcome to this webinar. Thank you for joining us. In this webinar, we'll be presenting UNESCO's Global Teacher Campus, as well as UNESCO ICT Essentials for Teachers. And we will be discussing the different needs that teachers that have arisen for teachers to sustain learning after the disruption of COVID-19 and due to school closures. So in this webinar, we will be having a panel to present the Global Teacher Campus. For that, we welcome Mr. Boren Shakrun. He's the Director of Division for Policies and Lifelong Learning Systems of UNESCO. Thank you for joining us, Boren. We also have our colleague, Michela Pagano. She's a project officer at the Unit for Technology and Artificial Intelligence in Education. Good morning, good afternoon to you, Michela. We will also have in this panel Mr. Cristobal Cobo. He's a senior specialist at the World Bank. Thank you, Cristobal, for joining us. After the presentation from the panel, we will have a discussion around the needs, both pedagogical and technological, that teachers have had and present in this pandemic. But also, for that we have Mr. Maurice Nkusi. He's the Director for Teaching and Learning Unit of Namibia University of Science and Technology, and Mr. Paul Moshi, who is a teacher, education, and curriculum program designer at Jordan University College in Tanzania. They will be presenting some of the needs that they have detected, some of the work that has been done to address these needs, as well as some of the partners of the Global Education Coalition, such as Blackboard Academy. For that, we're joined by Ms. Joel Armando. She's a product manager and faculty of the Blackboard Academy. Joel, welcome aboard. We will also have a presentation from Ms. Christina Thorensen, who is the Global Lead for Teacher Engagement from Microsoft. She will be presenting Microsoft Teacher Training Programs. And finally, we will have a message from CMEO, the Southeast Asian Ministers of Education Organization. For that, we are joined by Ms. Ethel Agnes Valenzuela, who is the Director of CMEO and will be presenting the new normal for special needs education. Before we begin, I would like to remind all participants that they can ask questions in the chat room, and that we will have a session to address those questions and answers. But also to our panelists, we can also remind you that you can feel free to address some of these questions as the session goes on. So without much further ado, I would like to present Mr. Boren Shakrun. He is an engineer and has a PhD in education sciences from Bourgogne University in France. Boren worked during the 1990s as a trainer, chief trainer, project manager, and he has also worked as a short-term consultant for a number of organizations, among which are the European Commission, the World Bank, and others. Before coming to the European Training Foundation in 2001, where he worked as a senior human capital development specialist. He is now the Director of Policies and Lifelong Learning Systems at UNESCO headquarters. Boren conducted a range of policy reviews and skills system diagnosis in different contexts. He has authored and co-authored various articles and books in the field of skills development and lifelong learning. Much of his most recent work has focused on global trends in reforming education and training systems and a global agenda for skills development in the context of 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. So, Boren, the floor is yours to present UNESCO's Global Teacher Campus.
Thank you, Carlos. After this, I feel that I have to retire.
Not yet, please.
Not yet. Thank you very much. Then I will make the presentation today, and warm welcome to all the participants, to the colleagues, to the members of the interagency group. I'm very pleased to share with you the concept that we have developed for the Global Teacher Campus and hear and engage with you to learn more how we can make it a reality. So maybe if I can have my presentation shared. And I will go through different steps. What I would like to do is, first of all, mention a bit what is the Global Education Coalition, how it is being organized, but I will focus more on what's the purpose of the Global Teacher Campus and how we are planning to deliver. So maybe starting with the Global Education Coalition and the mentioning a bit that we launched the Global Education Coalition back in March, when we have seen that there are major challenges in terms of the continuity of education all over the world. And we thought that this is a challenge that cannot be addressed only by one organization or one government, but it requires a broad partnership that can involve a wide range of stakeholders, from private sector to civil society, to governments, to international organizations. Next, please. And we have set for the coalition 4 objectives that are evolving because the agenda and the situation is evolving. First of all, is to respond to the disruption in terms of the school closure, but also working with partners to scale up distance learning and remote learning models and platform and solutions that have been adopted by different partners. Third, we were, of course, aware that the situation will be evolving, and we needed to cope also with the recovery and work with the countries to support them in the recovery phase and in reimagining education going forward. But obviously, we also consider that it's important that we collect data, that we build knowledge, and we are able to share it, but we also advocate for education globally. And this was the 4th objective that we have set. Through these objectives, of course, we called on partners to join us. And as of today, we have more than 150 partners that have joined the coalition. These are partners that decided to join us because they decided that it's important for the international cooperation for solidarity. And the slogan of the coalition is solidarity. And as you can see, there is a wide range of partners from private sector, and we are very happy to have with us today Christina from Microsoft. We have Joel also from Blackboard, but we have also colleagues from the World Bank, from Semeo. So this is what the coalition is about. And of course, when we started working, we decided that it's important to organize the work of the Global Educational Coalition, and we organized it through 3 pillars of our work. One, which is the most important action, is about country support. The second, we needed to make some accelerated impact. And that's how we defined 3 global flagships that I will be elaborating more on one of them. But we decided that connectivity was a major challenge everywhere, not only in developing countries or economies, but also even in the most developed economies. Teachers were also important aspect of the work, and I will come back to that, of course. But then we also knew by experience and from the previous crisis that gender and gender equality is an important aspect, and that there is a large number of particularly women and girls that are at risk of dropping out, that are at risk of losing in terms of learning and in terms of engaging in further learning and in the labor market. The last pillar of our work is about data, knowledge, and advocacy. It's about collecting evidence to support decisions. It's about building knowledge. And earlier today, we have launched the toolkit for education response, which we built together with several partners of the coalition, including with McKinsey and Company. So the knowledge and the advocacy dimension of our work are critical. But obviously, I would like to focus on teachers and why we have decided to launch the Global Teacher Campus as one of the key pillars and as one of the key area or initiative of the Global Education Coalition. Next, please. First, it's important to remind ourselves that while, of course, at the peak of the crisis, we had more than 1.5 billion learners that were out of school and were not learning, or at least had to learn remotely. Even today, we have still 53 countries where there is a countrywide school closure, and that affects more than 850 million. So we are not out of the crisis. And it's important to keep in mind that the crisis is a protracted one, and that we have to cope not only with the just school reopening, but also with the situation where we have to continue remote learning, or at least engage in hybrid learning. Next, please. What is most worrying is, of course, about teachers. And let me start with the OECD countries, because we tend to think that teachers in OECD countries are ready and they are equipped with the ICT skills. As you can see from the data, more than 40% of teachers in OECD countries have not been part of a recent professional development activities when it comes to ICT for teaching. So the situation is critical as well in OECD countries. But when you take the situation to other contexts, and for example, in Africa, we see that many teachers do not meet the national requirement for teaching. And of course, the ICT skills are not part of it. So the challenge is huge for teachers broadly, and of course, particularly for some of the regions and contexts in our world. So the challenge is huge, and we need to cope with it. And to cope with it, we needed a large-scale intervention. Next, please. Because we know that education disruption is putting more demand on teachers. We know that teachers will likely face higher demand now, but also in the future, in terms of being the frontline workers and being ready for responding to the challenges. We also know that the learning losses are huge, and that the learning gaps may even increase for many students. That there would be a tighter budget, unfortunately, for teacher training, for education broadly, but particularly for teacher training. And that we cannot expect that the infrastructure will evolve very quickly, but there is a need for investing in this infrastructure, and we are lacking readiness and resources to meet the teacher needs in this context. Next, please. So what we want to do with the Global Teacher Campus is a mission-oriented initiative. And when we say mission, that means it is clear in terms of its results, in terms of its target, in terms of this timing, but in terms of where it will happen. So we would like to train teachers not on everything, not on all subjects, on ICT in education and pedagogies. We want to train 1 million teachers in different settings, not only K-12 teachers. We are looking at the lifelong learning teachers. That will include pre-primary school teachers, that will include technical and vocational education and training, adult learning, literacy, and also higher education teachers. We want to achieve this by September 2021. Of course, we are ambitious. Of course, it's optimistic, but that's what the coalition is about resolving the problem and finding solution. But of course, it's a global initiative, but we would like to focus on the most marginalized and the most disadvantaged target group, but also countries. Next, please. So how we will deliver this? And that's where the debate and the discussion that Carlos mentioned earlier is important. We would like to map teacher colleges and their needs. We would like to adapt the partners' offers and use an international benchmark, and my colleague Michaela will refer to that. We would like to organize the teacher training as we move forward, and of course in an incremental way. We will need to identify additional costs and look to mobilize those resources. We will need to enroll teachers, engage them, assess and certify, and of course monitor and report on the results. That's how we are planning to do, but that's a broad process that we are considering. Next, please. So what resources we have in our hand? First of all, we have tools and international benchmark like ICT, the International Competence Framework for Teachers. We have ICT Essentials, and my colleague Michaela will present it. We are mapping teacher training institutions and colleges to know who they are, where they are, and we are leveraging different databases that exist. We are also mapping and looking at our Global Education Coalition partners' offers. We have many partners, and some of them are here today, that are offering teacher training, and that's part of their in-kind contribution to the Global Education Coalition. But we would like also to leverage the Teacher Task Force Knowledge Base platform, which is a platform that can drive teacher development that can drive evidence-based analysis, knowledge sharing, and capacity building. Next, please. Dear colleagues, for UNESCO and for the Global Education Coalition, and I hope and I believe is for all of you, equity and gender equality are critical. And that means that we will work with the teacher training institution to prioritize equity and gender equality and trying to reach to the most marginalized teachers, because we have also teachers that are facing major challenge in equity and gender equality. We would like to look at connectivity challenge. Of course, many of the offers are online learning, but we would like to look at offline opportunities and support connectivity whenever the Global Education Coalition partners can support, government can support, and other partners. And we would like to mobilize resources for that. Next, please. It's important, and maybe you can push the different buttons here. It's important to consider the different settings, and we know that different contexts we will have to cope with them. In some countries we have full connectivity, and of course the needs might be different, but we have also emerging connectivity in some contexts, and we have no connectivity. And the teacher training and the global teacher campus will have to cope with that. And as I mentioned, it has to cope with the high-tech, low-tech, and no-tech solutions that the partners are offering, online and offline solutions. Next, please. Who are the partners? These are indicative, and they are, of course, I just put some of the partners that have already committed to support teacher training and are offering teacher training program. But obviously, the number of the Global Education Coalition partners that are interested in this area are much higher. And some of the partners are already reaching out to us to see if they can join the Global Teacher Campus. And of course, it's an open platform, and we are very pleased and will be very happy to have other partners joining us. Next, please. So how we will do it? We'll try to match the demand and supply. The demand coming from teacher colleges with the supply coming from the Global Education Coalition. That's our role, and that's what we would like to do. By leveraging the teacher colleges structure, setting up large cohort, because we would like to reach scale, identify priority countries where we can start operating, and of course, creating the capacities within UNESCO to support this and to work with the partners in this context. Next, please. We are creating within UNESCO what I call a nerve center. That's the Global Teacher Campus team that will work on gathering data and monitoring and measuring progress, linking teacher colleges with the partners, establishing clear protocols for decision-making processes in terms of enrolling, for example, teachers, support for operational and infrastructure readiness, engage stakeholders and communicate, and of course, guarantee compliance and resolve issues. And one of the compliance that we are asking all the partners is about data protection and security for teachers. Next, please. So basically, we are looking at 6 key capability processes. One is to predefine how we will operate. We would like to be data-driven and collect data on the needs, layers with the partners and engaging them, support actions to deliver, communicate, and of course monitor performance and compliance. These are the 6 processes that we are setting up for the Global Teacher Campus. Next, please. We will organize protocol for engagement. That means readiness assessment with the teacher colleges, managing the enrollment of teachers, and then of course sustaining achievement, because we don't want that the Global Teacher Campus is one-shot action. It has to create capacities within the teacher colleges to ensure that the programs that are implemented are anchored within the national institution and the teacher colleges partner that will be joining. And of course, having that partnership with the global education partners in a more sustainable way. Next, please. So what is in it for you? First of all, it's about contributing to the coalition objectives that I mentioned earlier. It's about also achieving the organization's objective, be it for the teacher colleges or for global education coalition partners. But it's also about achieving tangible results, because that's what we are trying to achieve. And we would like to see 1 million teachers trained on ICT and pedagogies. What is in it for us? because we would like to see response on the ground. We would like to also develop cases and learn from the experience. And we would like to refine these resources for future and for developing resources that can be shared with a larger than the organization that will be involved in this initiative. Next, please. So what are the potential contribution from other partners? There could be financial support, because we know that, as I mentioned earlier, for example, infrastructure is lacking, connectivity is lacking. We need also political support, and it's about joining us and advocating at home for this initiative and for the Global Education Coalition. And it's also about peer learning and support. We would like to share experience, and it's very important that we share what we are learning in this context. Next, please. I'm almost finished, Carlos. This is the last slide. So basically, the key question for our engagement is what type of engagement we can foresee from the partners, how we will work with the teams that are mobilized, when can we kickstart our efforts. And we, of course, we already started with some of the partners. You mentioned Blackboard. We are also working with Microsoft colleagues. There are other partners like Pix also with whom we have already engaged. But we would like to see more efforts and going forward. And of course, the ambition of 1 million is an ambition, a target that we need to engage. But of course, we would like also to know what are the plans in the different partners that are around the table, and engage with their objectives and with their plans. So that's what we are trying to do. Carlos, thank you very much for the time and for this opportunity to share our plans. And obviously, I remain ready for a question and answer session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Boren. Thank you very much for this presentation and for reminding us of the size of the challenge that the COVID-19 crisis has brought forth, and the need for partnerships, for mobilization, and to support the efforts of member states, many of which have to do with teacher professional development, as you mentioned, and importantly so, to say that it concerns not only basic education, but also other forms of learning, such as Tibet, lifelong learning. So this coalition is for all of this, and with a focus as well on ICTs. And precisely on this issue of ICTs, our next speaker is my colleague, Michela Pagano. She is a project officer at the Unit for Technology and Artificial Intelligence in Education from UNESCO. Michela is also passionate about her work on technology and innovation projects with a focus on Africa. She has had the privilege of supporting countries in the areas of ICT policy development, capacity strengthening for educators, curriculum development, among others. She started her career at the European Schoolnet in Brussels before joining UNESCO in Nairobi and now in Paris. Michela holds a master's in development economics and international relations at the University of Pavia and has been a visiting student at the Claremont Colleges and Barnard College of Columbia University. Michela will present the UNESCO ICT Essential for Teachers in 7 minutes time. So Michela, please.
Okay, you can see my presentation, right?
We can see it. It's not displayed as a whole, but we can see it.
Now you can
now
see
we can,
that.
Okay. Now it is.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. Thank you for the opportunity to present here what we're doing, trying to leverage the work of UNESCO in the area of ICT in education for teachers. UNESCO has been a strong advocate for years, even before the COVID disruption, a strong supporter and advocate of the intelligent integration of technology for education. And one of our guiding lights is the UNESCO ICT competency framework for teachers, also known as the ICT CFT. The third iteration, the third version was published in 2018, and it is our benchmark and our guide for pre-service and inter-service teacher training. the ICT CFT is particularly interesting because it looks at 6 different aspects of the teacher's profession. So it's not only about the integration of technology for in the classroom for pedagogy, but it also looks at the understanding of ICT in education policy, or also the use of technology to support organization and administration, but also other aspects such as curriculum and assessment, or the teacher professional learning. And the competencies are developed on a continuum of sophistication, from the knowledge acquisition level, which is the basic level, through the knowledge deepening stage, and then all the way to the knowledge creation stage, which really is about the really has a transformative impact of technology for education. And the interaction between the 6 aspects and the 3 levels forms the matrix of the 18 competencies of the ICT CFT. So as UNESCO, we promote the ICT CFT, as I said, as a guide for teacher training, but also as for the development of a country level competency frameworks for the integration of ICT. And we've had many examples of country level adaptations and contextualization of the competency framework, as well as the development of country level training programs. Interestingly enough, there is a UNESCO hub on the website of the oercommons.org, where one can find all the various courses that were developed. But now we found ourselves in a situation in which we had several courses that were developed, several training programs, but all of them are hosted in national or institutional websites, and also they're contextualized, and they're more like pertinent to the national needs. So we do not have a practical training course that is generic and can be used as an example, because we have the ICT competency framework, which is a framework, but then we don't have a generic course. So this is the idea behind this activity, which is the development of a generic training course. We call it UNESCO ICT Essentials for Teachers. That we are developing right now. And for the first, as a first step, we are concentrating at the knowledge acquisition level. And we are developing, we have already developed a curriculum map, and we're in the process of finalizing the development of the course. I just wanted to give you a few details for the course at a glance. So as I was saying, for now, it's at the knowledge acquisition level, and we hope then to be able to develop courses for the knowledge deepening and the knowledge creation. The course is going to be composed of 18 units of study that correspond to around 44 notional hours. And the nature of the ICT CFT is really about the integration of technology at the service of the teaching profession in all its aspects. And of course, like in a classroom setting. But so we thought long about this, and then we decided to structure the course so that we could have a special track on emergency remote teaching. So there are 11 units out of this ICT UNESCO ICT Essentials for Teachers that are particularly tailored to the emerging needs to deliver and use technology for delivering education at distance. So there will be this special track as well. And the course is going to be available in a Moodle environment. As I was saying before, there are many courses that are already out there, but they're all they're all in institutional or like national platforms, and this is going to be in a platform that can just be that is not attached to any country or any institution. So it will be available in a Moodle environment and in a PDF format, and it will be suitable for self-study, but also instructor facilitated learning. And the idea is that this will be put at the disposal of teachers and countries for them to decide whether to have teachers to take it as a self-study module, or also it can be further customized back. And the idea is to have a foundation for a course, because we are using open educational resources, and because this course will have open access license, it will ensure, again, easy adaptation and mutualization. At the same time, we're leveraging on the work of the Global Education Coalition partners, and we're trying to see for each of the competencies and the units how we can offer the associate the materials of the global education partners. So stay tuned for the next steps. We're hoping to be able to launch the knowledge acquisition course in the next few weeks, and so that we can then move on to the next stages. And really the idea of this is to put something that can be useful like in the short term, but also to encourage in the long term the adoption of the ICT competency framework for teachers and the integration of technology to serve the improvement of teaching and learning. Over to you, Carlos. I hope I kept the time.
You did indeed. Thank you very much, Michela. Thank you very much for the presentation of the UNESCO ICT Essentials for Teachers. I think it is important to say that the responses in terms of ICT training of the competencies need to be contextualized to the needs and the context of the different countries. So this innovation on what we have learned in the implementation of the ICT competency framework for teachers of UNESCO in different geographies, and its tailoring to the needs and the needs of the emergency is something that will definitely be valuable. So thank you for that, Michela. Our next speaker is Mr. Cristobal Cobo. He is a senior education specialist at the World Bank. He also focuses on the effective and appropriate use of new technologies in education. Before joining the World Bank in 2019, where he is a core member of the World Bank's Global EdTech team, Dr. Cobo spent 15 years working at the intersection of future of learning cultures, of innovation, and human-centered technologies across both developed and developing countries. Previously, Cristobal served as a founding director of the Center for Research at the Ceibal Foundation in Uruguay, leading initiatives to learn from one of the world's most notable examples of the use of technological at this scale across education system, the Plan Ceibal, which you might be familiar with in Uruguay. Before joining the Center for Research at the Ceibal Foundation, Cristobal spent 5 years as an associate researcher at the Oxford Internet Institute at the University of Oxford, of course, in the UK. So Cristobal will be addressing a very important question for this webinar. Can technology help teachers to mitigate the impact of COVID-19? And the most challenging part, Cristobal, is that you have to answer that in 7 minutes.
Thank you, Carlos. Can you hear me? Thank you, everybody, for the invitation. This is such a privilege. And I celebrate the opportunity of discussing our first liners of the crisis. And I think this is a fantastic opportunity. You know what? I'm not going to present a number of slides. I'm going to talk. And I think you can, if you want, you can turn off your screen. You can minimize your monitor, because this is the reality of how most of the kids in GPE countries are learning these days, just based on audio. So the big question that I have for you is, can really technology help to mitigate the impact of COVID? And I think the short answer is, it depends. The technology we know is not a silver bullet, but it can simply amplify the opportunities for outreach, the opportunities for connection, for delivery, but also they can amplify inequalities. Therefore, it's super important to keep into account some of the enabling conditions behind. Having basic infrastructure from electricity and connectivity, having access to devices, having content which are locally relevant and in the main local languages, platform for teaching, for learning, for management, but also some of the key capacities that were presented a minute ago. And we will go a little bit farther on that. The evidence shows us today that the technology for learning in most cases present uneven results, especially when they're being used simply to replace analog solutions, like moving from the book to the ebook, if they are not supported by an effective strategy underneath. Now, in the context of COVID, we are seeing three main trends: increasing learning loss, increasing expansion of the pre-existing inequalities, and increasing risk of dropout from a larger sector of the student population. And now, what do we understand by technology in this context? I think this is an important question, because we have to understand that technology during the COVID has been extremely multi-channel, bringing back the radio, the television, the printed materials, a number of feature phones, also known as non-smartphones, and as it was presented a minute ago, a number of offline friendly solutions that you can use when you don't have connectivity or the connectivity is irregular. The best technology is the one that is already domesticated. Expanding access to technology alone is not sufficient to improve learning. Countries should really invest in technology only if they're willing to invest in what comes after that. Technologies, as we said, can increase inequalities, and teachers do play a key role in order to reduce that. We know already, after all these months of pandemic, that technology won't replace the school, won't replace the human interaction, but they also can be extremely effective to facilitate learning if they're used wisely. There are 5 principles that we use at the EdTech team and the World Bank to drive these designs. The first one is ask why. Keep the purpose and the strategy in mind. Number 2, design at a scale, having principles like inclusion and equity all the time present. Number 3, relevant for this discussion, empower teachers, help teachers to support students' learning. Number 4, engage the ecosystem. Keep in mind the big picture and all the players that are behind. The ones who provide connectivity, the ones who develop the contents, the ones who enable the training and the monitoring and the regular financing, all these elements. And finally, be data-driven. Evidence-based will help us to learn what is working and what is not working. Now, we have seen during the pandemic a number of short, and we'll present some short and long-term actions that we can keep into account. Some of the short-term actions that we see in a number of countries are crash courses, short-term courses to understand how to use technology in a short time, providing guidance or different forms of remote support, call centers, WhatsApp, Telegram, and a number of other technologies to provide real-time support. Now, one of the interesting things that we see emerging is a system on providing new forms of quality interaction, which can be real-time, synchronous, or not real-time, asynchronous. It doesn't have to be synchronous to be high quality, but it has to be consistent and regular. All these elements are part of the technical readiness and the content readiness, but it's the other side of the coin as well that we have to consider, the long-term interventions. Sustained professional development on pre and in service, structured teacher support, reducing the administrative workload, and also career progression in these digital skills, where it's not anymore a nice to have capacity, but something that is really central in the capacities of teachers. So that will mean learning to transform the traditional practice into this new context. For instance, learning how to manage and use attention and time, which are some of the most scarce resources. Now, that will go into something much deeper, which is changing the teacher's mindset, decentralize the learning, give up part of the full control, and transforming some of the key elements, such as transforming what is understood by school, which is not a place anymore, but it's a combination of different quality experiences of exchange, re-understanding the role of the teacher, which is not anymore the only source of relevant knowledge, but is the one who challenges the existing knowledge and help us to connect knowledge from different disciplines and contexts. And also that role can be enhanced by remote tutors and remote coaching, which we have seen during the pandemic that really improved the experience. And also we can transform what is understood by learner. A learner who has to navigate in a world completely overwhelmed by information, but even more important, someone who has to learn how to become an independent learner. Something that we have observed during the pandemic is, for instance, in the Scandinavian countries, kids are really enjoying the independent learning during the lockdown. So this really says a lot about the opportunities that we have onwards. Now, as we see, technological skills are not enough. Digital pedagogy means that not only learning to use ICTs, and learning to establish realistic expectations of what can be done with technology and what are the potential impacts. If we have learned something in this crisis, it's that technology, rather than a source of disruption, can be a source and a tool for mitigation and inclusion. But teachers, and this is really important, teachers need to be in the driver's seat. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cristobal. I think it's an important issue that you bring forth, that not only are technologies important in reaching out to hard to reach out places, but also that we should take a look at the enabling conditions, the material conditions, the capacities of all participants. So thank you very much for that. Now we will move on to the panel discussion. We have 4 panelists that I have presented at the beginning, and we'll begin with Mr. Maurice Nkusi, who will respond to some of the challenges and some of the questions that have been raised by the panel. Mr. Nkusi is Director of Teaching and Learning Unit at the Namibia University of Science and Technology. He was previously head of the instructional technology, managing the institution's e-learning systems and integrating new technologies in instruction. Before joining the university, Mr. Nkusi was responsible for curriculum development in information and communication technology related subjects at the National Institute for Educational Development in Namibia's Ministry of Education. He facilitated ICT integration in the school curriculum in colleges of education, and he was the system administrator of the directorate, advising researching new ways to improve the teaching and learning ICT-related subjects using new technologies. And the question, Maurice, that we'll ask you to address are, well, I mean, we've seen that the pandemic has unveiled a number of needs regarding teacher training, some of which are pedagogical and some technological or ICT related. In your experience, what are the skills that teachers need to face the new challenges of distance education and ICT-based learning? So you have 5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much. I'm going to try to go even below 5. As I may start by saying that teachers need already to possess the pedagogical skills since they are already in the professional teaching profession. So they need to be familiar with various teaching methods, strategies, innovative pedagogies to respond to students' needs. So your question related on what kind of skills teachers should possess in order to overcome the challenges based on different challenges, issues, in order to be more effective in a distance and using technology as well. So here I'm proposing the kind of skills teachers should develop. First of all, teachers should be able to utilize the productivity application software that will help them to be able to operate in the world made of information age and data age. So we know that using these technology skills such as word processing, spreadsheet skills, database management will help teachers to be able to operate efficiently in their profession. Secondly, teachers should be able to utilize those productivity skills that they have acquired already to effectively facilitate learning in the classroom and especially outside the classroom. Teachers should also be able to be aware that they should comprehend the fact that technology integration in education is not a substitute media to replicate traditional functions such as distribution of lesson notes on the web. So teachers should understand that the use of technology should provide new ways, innovative kind of support for teaching, learning, and assessment. So teachers should develop this kind of model where they have to understand the substitution aspect, which doesn't have any value in pedagogy, the augmentation, modification, and redefinition in order to be very effective in ICT integration, teaching and learning. Teachers should be able to develop skills in effective integration in teaching, learning, and assessment, where technology is an integral part of the learning design by pedagogically re-engineering the subject they are teaching, taking into account of new and emerging ICT tools at their disposal to accommodate the learner needs. Teachers should develop the skills of interpreting with accurate understanding of policies related to ICT integration in teaching and learning. And on top of that, they have to develop skills to put in practice these policies and framework. So we know that in many instances, the implementation is always an issue. We observed during the lockdown that teachers struggled to communicate with learners and engage them in effective learning, and in the process, monitor their progress. Therefore, teachers need to develop strategic communication skills with the aim to engage learners remotely. This is very important. The fact is that having access to quality content and the powerful systems in place in order to access that content is not enough. Remote facilitation of learning skills are so critical to respond adequately to future pandemic while learners are studying from home. Teachers should also be able to develop skills of collecting data related to their teaching methods, learners' performance, and analyze it to identify strengths and weaknesses in the delivery. Teachers need to develop skills in action research to inform their practices. A connected teacher with access to various mediums of communication and collaboration is extremely important in situation of lockdown. So we are saying that teachers need to develop skills to participate in professional development intervention conducted online and participate actively to develop new skills to address existing and emerging challenges. As connected professional, teachers need to develop skills to identify, and this is very important, learning community of practice that will permit them to grow in their profession by collaborating with other professionals working in the same sector. In conclusion, in order to be successful in responding adequately to any pandemic that may surge in the future, teachers should develop 3 main skills, including pedagogical knowledge and skills, content knowledge and skills, technological knowledge and skills. And for this to happen, teachers need to constructively align these skills to be coherent in the support they are meant to provide to the learners. So what we had in this session, we have a lot of initiative, specifically the Global Teacher Campus that is going to support teachers, educators around the world. We are really advocating this, this initiative to be supported all over the world because it's going to address most of the issues. We also heard about a very interesting initiative on IT essential for teachers, bringing together all these aspects. The teachers will really be able to overcome the challenges that they are facing now or they will face in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maurice, for your words. I think you've highlighted the importance of teachers having the right mix of skills, both in terms of pedagogy, content, and technology, which is something that we're trying to promote in the Global Teacher Campus and the UNESCO ICT Essential for Teachers. So after Maurice, we have Mr. Paul Moshi. Mr. Paul Moshi is teacher of education curriculum and program, designer at the Jordan University College in Tanzania. Mr. Moshi has been a higher education instructor for more than 30 years. He's a trainer and consultant for curriculum development and education reform, pedagogy evaluation, and curriculum alignment processes. He's an expert in African countries' curriculum reform with publications on curriculum development as well. So we have Paul, if you may, 5 minutes to address the same question that Maurice just did. What are those needs in terms of pedagogy, in terms of content, in terms of technology that teachers need to continue and ensure the continuity of learning? You are muted, Paul, if you can unmute yourself.
Now, am I on now, Mika? Okay, thank
Yes.
you very much. And I would say I found this question very challenging when I looked at the different contexts and realities of countries like Tanzania, Zambia, Kenya, where I've been, and I'm mentioning just a few. And when we look at teachers, who are these teachers? You look at the teacher of basic and secondary education, you look at another teacher of tertiary education, and you go to the university. And I've been looking at the teacher education setups and the curricula. And you said, even though we know so much of what the teachers needs, what is the reality that we can articulate the needs, given that we have seen teachers who are struggling with the basic subject knowledge, leave alone the pedagogical knowledge, and most of the basic and, for example, basic primary education are really using the traditional chalk and board. How then to transform these teachers is where we need an intervention that to build in them the confidence that they can really use an alternative knowledge. That's one thing, because they don't have the confidence at all. I've tried to ask some primary and secondary school teachers about how they best cope with this pandemic, or if it comes again. They said, actually, I think the best way is for the government to put up what are called media lessons. Now, when I look at, I went into one school, say, they had 700 students, for example, and talked to one of the head of the school, and I said, how did you cope? People were caught up in shock, and what they did is that there's only one teacher who was IT competent, trained in ICT. But now we can see that the basic knowledge of even preparing a lesson and empowering students to really generate knowledge rather than going to traditional chalk and talk is one thing that we need to instill in teachers so that they get transformed. We are struggling with transforming or reforming curricula so that it really prepares teachers who are more confident in giving part of the authority to students. That was called competency-based kind of curriculum. So ICT is now becoming a lesson in almost every other teacher education in the past 10, 15 years. Now we are enforcing it. But what do they learn in the ICT is the simple technical skills of operating these gadgets rather than the pedagogical transformative skills. So teachers need more of what I would say, basic knowledge of combining both the basic knowledge of the subject matter they have and how they could use the simplest available technology within their settings. Because we most of us think of computers, but there are no computers in most of the schools. We think of basic kind of transforming even the hard notes into soft notes so that you can even post it using media like WhatsApp and so forth. But how many teachers of this basic and secondary education have access to smartphones? Some teachers, of course, have the basic kind of writing and copying with some simple posting of WhatsApp messages to students. Some schools struggled and posted even hard copies. They went into the traditional distance, hard material posted. Some private schools with some computers managed to scan some notes and post them to students. In remote areas, and ask parents, for example, to manage them. But it became very difficult when it came to monitoring the learning and the assessment. So to me, it's more complex. And so I would go with the UNESCO agenda of doing needs assessment and say, each teacher needs a different type of support and technology so as to manage the crisis in the coming year. So that we don't go global, we don't go like everybody, every other teacher, no. There are those who may find themselves even hard to cope with the basic teaching knowledge, pedagogy, because of the way pedagogy and teacher education is structured. So I'm rather perplexed. that it's a hard job to do, but let's look to the majority of the teachers in the basic and primary education, do what we call case by case, so that we could identify what are the basic needs, and we don't just go IT flat, because it may not help to solve and help the teachers who are not even confident to touch a computer or even a smartphone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul, for these remarks. I think it's very important to consider the realities that teachers experience on their day-to-day work, and the need to transform those realities, not only by infusing confidence and leadership, but also, and very importantly so, to assess the needs for support that they have, which is something that we can contribute to. Our next three speakers will actually be addressing the needs that have been mentioned by the panel and by both Maurice and Paul. So they will be presenting different experiences that from three partners of the Global Education Coalition: Blackboard Academy, Microsoft, and CMEO, the Southeast Asian Ministers of Education organization. So the first one in turn will be Ms. Joel Armando. She is a product manager at Blackboard Academy. She has 20 years of experience in higher education, working online and blended learning projects, and fulfilling different roles. She led the Education Technology Department at Universidad Nacional de Córdoba in Argentina with 120,000 students. Since then, she moved to the UK and worked in Cass Business School and London Business School, where she was an educational technologist and a learning innovation manager, respectively. So, Joel, how can Blackboard help in addressing these needs that have just been mentioned? So you have 7 minutes, please.
Thank you, and a very difficult question, but thank you very much, and thank you, Maurice and Paul, for sharing your thoughts on what are the needs and the skills that are needed for teachers. What I would like to share here is how we're doing it, which might not be the right answer, might not be the best answer, but it's what we're trying to do at the moment. And I'm not sharing a screen, so I'm not able to move the presentation. I don't know if someone is doing it on my behalf, or shall I share my screen?
Yes, all you need to say is when.
Perfect. So if we go to the first slide, what we are doing is we are developing we have been working in a professional development program for teachers in different levels, higher education, and now also in K-12. And our focus is on online learning and blended learning strategies for teaching and learning. And one thing that I wanted to highlight in terms of how to build those skills and how to build those capabilities that were mentioned by Maurice and Paul, because we think it's not just a matter of which content, it's also a matter of how to build those capabilities. The content might be excellent, but if the educational proposal is not the right one, the capabilities won't be built. So this is our approach of how to do it. We try to model the new practice. So when we teach online, when we propose a course for teachers, we try that our course is actually modeling the way we think online learning should happen. So we try to propose a mix of asynchronous and synchronous activities, collaboration, reflection, and allow teachers to live that so they can reproduce it or they can try with their students. The important other second component is give enough time for exploration and experimentation. And we know that's a challenge when we talk about larger scales and countrywide initiatives. But in order to change teaching practices, you need time to explore, to experiment, to come back and reflect, and to come back to the classroom and try it again. So that takes time, and any professional development for teachers should allow for that time and that reflection. And of course, any professional development for teachers should allow for collaboration and for peer learning. So the online course for teachers should be based on learning from colleagues and sharing best practices with colleagues. And finally, I think in terms of, for us as educators, when we really change our practices is when we see the impact of the new practice in the learning of our students. So when we see our students are actually learning in a better way and are actually reflecting more deeply, are better critical thinkers, is when we really are convinced of the new practice. So that's where probably the cycle of innovations really closes. So if we go to the next slide, that's what I just described is very challenging in a larger scale. So if you have a group of 15 teachers and a lot of time, you can easily probably achieve that. But if you have a group of 300 or 1,000 of teachers, achieving that is a real challenge. So what we're trying to do is a combination of online courses that are synchronous and asynchronous, facilitator enablement and support. So we work with in this case, in the Caribbean, we're working with 40 teachers that will become facilitators, and we enable them to be the teachers of the teachers in their countries. And then a community that will continue supporting them during time. So if we go to the next one, in this, this is a plan that we are in the Caribbean we're implementing. We started with the delivery of the online course for these 40 teachers. They finished, they graduated last Monday, and they're now taking two more courses that are more like a train-the-trainer approach. And then they will be the ones delivering the course for their colleagues in their respective countries. And that's a cascade implementation of a project. We, of course, are evaluating this while we're doing it with the teachers, with the UNESCO office, and in the future also with the future candidates in the project. And if we go to the next slide, and I'm going really quickly because I'm very conscious of time. This is a course that we just finished, the Blended Learning and Online Strategies, and this is a certificate that we just extended to the participants. And I wanted to finish with the words of one of the participants that is in the next one, because I think she couldn't. We couldn't have said it better than Marlene. Marlene was telling what she learned from this course. And these three basic principles are very important for online learning and blended learning. And she was saying, okay, I learned that designing and delivering learning online is not just a matter of one person. It takes a team, it takes a village. She said it's important to be intentional about making learning accessible for all learners. And she said, ongoing support is critical for success and achievement. So I think these three learnings that she took from the course are, very important learnings for us. And I wanted to finish with that. And I will, that's all from Blackboard Academy. Thank you very much, Carlos.
Thank you very much, Joel. Thank you for this presentation, and thank you for Blackboard Academy for partnering with the Global Education Coalition. Very important points, Joel, you bring to the table, the issue of training of trainers and the challenge of building communities for the deployment on these sort of programs. Our next speaker is Ms. Christina Thorensen. She's the Global Lead for Teacher Engagement at Microsoft. Christina also is the Global Lead for the Teacher Engagement team and works to equip education teams at Microsoft with the strategic programs to support, empower, and engage education leaders and educators to transform modern teaching and learning around the world. And with that said, the question is, Christina, how does Microsoft do this? And how can we support countries with your programs? So Christina, please, 7 minutes.
Great, thank you. And can you just confirm you can see my slides?
They are there.
Perfect, okay. Well, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to be here. At Microsoft, my team has the privilege of working with educators, school leaders, and systems every day to really assure that we're equipping educators to be successful with technology. And specifically to be prepared to leverage the possibilities that our technology can offer to improve the learning opportunities, the skills development, and the overall student outcomes that our educators are tirelessly nurturing. We truly believe that supporting our educators and helping them really build the understanding about how to apply the technology to their important work, their pedagogical approaches, to really understand how to impact the learning environment is super important. And so when the pandemic arose, my team was really able to tap into a number of the programs that we had actually been working with for years to support educators and really leverage these even more extensively to support educators during the pandemic. And I'd like to share with you a few of those, and it's not exhaustive, but these are some of the ones that I would say were most impactful to supporting educators. The first is our Microsoft Educator Center, and this is a free online and on-demand hub, and it features professional development and learning paths and resources. And most importantly, this has really been developed in partnership with educators and school leaders and systems to really understand what are the needs and the opportunities, and how can we best support educators in everything from digital literacy to how to use our products in the classroom to support the learning outcomes that they're focused on. And during the pandemic, we went from seeing an average of about 300,000 visitors worldwide coming to the site every day to over 1 million coming in during the March, April, May timeframe. The fact that this is free, it has localized courses that our local teams around the world support. We have over 2,000 resources available here, many in multiple languages, that are free to any educator, actually any individual who is seeking to do professional development, to learn about how to integrate technology into the learning environment. And I just emphasize that this is not just product training. This is really about making sure you understand how to apply the tools to drive the outcomes that you're looking for. And it's just super important as we ask educators to think about integrating technology that they feel really equipped to understand how to effectively use it. And so this has been a phenomenal resource for educators and widely used. The other thing I would say just out on the Educator Center is this area where we actually work to really create community and celebrate educators who are achieving accomplishment through the Microsoft Educator Center, and they can earn badges to really acknowledge the work and the training that they've done. And the one I wanted to call out was on the far right, the Microsoft Innovative Educator Expert. This is the most significant of the accomplishments, meaning the work that an educator puts in to achieve that level is considerable. But this community has continued to grow over the years. And this year, we actually have 20,000 educators from around the world who have achieved this expert credential. And during the pandemic, what was so incredible about this community is this group of educators raised their hand and said, how can I help other educators who are struggling with remote learning or are struggling just to use technology, and how can I coach and guide and so forth. And so these educators were out on social. We actually hosted a number of webinars and webcasts where they came and they shared their best practices. And the most important part of this was, as educators, they really appreciated the hurdles, the challenges that other educators were going through. And so they could be a trusted partner and peer to educators who are learning how to integrate the technology, who had to, in matters of hours, figure out how to do remote teaching and really even support even parents and families and understanding how to do this. And so this was just an incredible resource and community. And so to some of the other comments, not only is it about the professional development, but also really supporting the community and making sure they feel connected. The third thing that we were able to tap into is the important role of professional development organizations. At Microsoft, we've been working with a number of global training partners. So these are professional organizations whose full purpose is to do education, professional development with educators and leaders. And during the pandemic, we were able to work with our global training partners. They're about 400 strong around the world, to make sure that they were able to partner with local schools and systems to really do online coaching and development for the educators during the pandemic. And then they were able to bring their work and then supplement with the Microsoft educator community to say, we'll do this coaching, online with you. and then kind of offline, you can go to the Microsoft Educator Center and continue that learning, and then we'll check back in a week's time and continue to work with you. And so this has been really a powerful community, so important to have the professional development organizations working with your schools and systems to really support the educators so they're getting the learning and the coaching throughout their journey. So that has been just a powerful community. And last but not least, I just wanted to mention something that we worked on as part of the coalition was really to develop the distance learning strategic plan resources. And this is really designed to support systems at different types of needs. So everything from no connectivity to low connectivity to connectivity. How do you develop a distance learning plan for your system? And what are the steps that are important to think through and develop for? And as part of that, the professional development in any of those stages or circumstances is super important. And so these resources are available for anyone to tap into. And we were able to pull a lot of the work we had from the Microsoft Education Center, working with global training partners to really support this. And we're not only seeing many countries tapping into this, but we're also seeing those professional development partners that we work with leveraging these resources and working with the systems to help develop those plans and making sure that the capacity building within the organizations is absolutely at the heart of how those plans will be successful. I hope I stayed on time there, Carlos, but overall, these were some of the things that Microsoft was able to bring forward and we continue to work on. And I'll just mention that we just released a whole new set of resources on hybrid learning. All of these resources are free for anybody out there. And we're just thrilled that we have the opportunity to provide these at Microsoft. Our mission is to enable every person on the planet to achieve more. And that couldn't be more true when we think of ensuring our educators are supported and equipped to leverage the power of technology to support learning, and ultimately to make sure that they can do their best work to support students to have the best future possible.
Thank you very much, Christina, and thank you very much to keeping the time. I think you bring forth a couple of very important issues that has to do with how the support for teachers is not only in terms of teacher education, but in a continuous manner on professional development, partnering with training professionals to develop the plans to tailor the offer. Thank you very much for that. Our next speaker is from CMEO, which is the Southeast Asian Ministers of Education Organization Secretariat based in Bangkok, Thailand. And she will be presenting, or we will be presenting on her behalf. She's with us, but due to connectivity challenges, heavy rains in Bangkok that might affect transmission, we will be presenting a video in which she presents the new normal for special needs education in CMEO. So Antoine, if we can, Ethel, thank you for joining us. We will be playing the video, and please do know that Ethel is with us for the questions and answers. Should you have any, put them on the chat.
Today's team members of UNESCO Global Education Coalition for COVID-19 response, educators, teachers who are watching us, friends, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning, afternoon, or evening to everyone joining this webinar on Global Teacher Campus, joining us from all over the world. It is an honor for CMEO to be with you today and to share our work on special needs education, reaching the most disadvantaged learners in relation to the teacher skills development. COVID-19 has created a huge impact globally, and education is not really spared. Based on the data from Johns Hopkins Coronavirus Resource Center, almost 33 million COVID cases and almost 1 million deaths are now recorded. I shall start my presentation by providing a snapshot of special education situation, especially in these most uncertain times. The pandemic has actually affected everyone around the globe, but those with disability are at greater risk to be left behind. Globally, there are 1 billion people with some forms of disability, and there are up to 150 million children living with disabilities. Children with disabilities are often the most vulnerable or excluded in our communities and are 10 times likely to attend school than those without. Based on the GEM report of UNESCO, 40% of low and lower middle income countries have not supported learners at risk of exclusion. While some 25% of teachers in 48 education systems report a high need for professional development on teaching students with special needs, while just 41 countries worldwide have recognized sign language as an official language. And this is the context where SIMEO, Southeast Asian Ministers of Education Organization, is coming from, especially on reaching special disadvantaged groups, disadvantaged learners brought by their physical disability. This is the reason why in 2010, SIMEO established a center in Malaysia for special needs education, which we call as SIMEO SEN. And it was approved by the Ministers of Education during the 45th SIMEO Council Conference. SIMEO Center on Special Education Needs was consistent with the SIMEO goal of promoting cooperation and collaboration in education, culture, and science, and particularly on priority number 2, addressing barriers to inclusion, promoting education for everyone. But SIMEO is an organization that is composed of 11 member countries. We make sure that no learner is left behind, especially for the most vulnerable groups. SIMEO SEN's priorities are in supporting education for visual, hearing impaired, speech, physical disabilities, learning difficulties, and consistent with its desire to make education accessible, especially for those with disabilities. I'm also pleased to inform everyone that SIMEO SEN's mandate is on promoting quality teaching and learning in special education needs, and the center contributed much in the promotion of inclusive education for all. We launch regular international conferences, and for special education, this is actually conducted or coordinated by our SIMEO SEN in Malaysia. They also implement several courses on best practice teaching and learning, deaf-blind education for special education teachers, human sexuality education for students with special needs, and Tibet transition program for school to career, and adapted physical education programs for children with disabilities. The SIMEO Strategic Plan 2021-2030 also laid down initiatives to ensure that SIMEO centers and network, 26 of them, all over Southeast Asia, will have a programmatic response, especially on priority number 2. We included in our strategic plan supporting children with Down syndrome, human sexuality education for children with special needs, supporting children with cerebral palsy, daily living skills for children with autism and the spectrum disorder or ASD in preschool level, disaster risk reduction programs for children with special needs, and culturally fair screening for children with special needs, and among others, school health programs and nutrition programs supporting children with autism spectrum disorder. All these have been approved and supported by the SIMEO Council of Ministers, and this is in response to really ensuring that all is for all, that no one is displaced and disadvantaged, as much as we can contribute for the region. SIMEO centers also launch collaborative programs for special education needs. Inter-center collaboration was part of our agenda recently, where we use different modalities for reaching out, and also for utilizing and boosting open educational resources for children with disabilities. TV and radio broadcast, printed module, use of sign languages in some of our capacity building program. This is to ensure that the displaced, disadvantaged learners are reached by the appropriate interventions. This is the message that resonated in Special Education Forum for Reaching the Unreached that SIMEO recently organized also in our webinar. So the collaborative program of centers are on action research for advocating proper nutrition, diets for children with ADHD, Down syndrome in Southeast Asia, which was also launched by our center in Indonesia, SIMEO RECON. We also have capacity building on psychosocial and mental health in school setting for Southeast Asia, led by our SIMEO TropMed or Tropical Medicine Network. Looking ahead, We are developing now open and online resources for teachers of children with special needs. There will be 4 modules that will be developed, and it will be placed in our own learning management system. We will be doing capacity building for teachers from Southeast Asia. So together we will redefine the needs for students, especially in core learning areas, for them to be able to also achieve and have quality education for them. I would like to end my presentation by sharing the 5 E's of moving forward. The first is that, early detection and intervention. The second E is that education should benefit all, and having a disability is not a reason to stop learning. Third is to establish solid support and funding. So Simeo has been championing Simeo Cares program by ensuring that we somehow, with the little funding that we have, we can reach to all sectors, including those with special needs. Fourth is to ensure availability of reliable data. That is actually the most challenging for all of us, especially to determine where the children with disabilities are, and how can we actually meet their needs to enhance the capacities of the special education teachers and to respond to the unique needs of children with disabilities. So if there is any silver lining in this COVID-19 pandemic, it is actually that you see all of us working together, ensuring that learning must continue. While the pandemic has accelerated the collaboration and partnership, now we are focusing on solid partnership to develop educational resources for children with special needs. It highlighted the critical role of teachers, as well as it has amplified for us to have good policy and programmatic support for children with special needs in Southeast Asia and even beyond. So thank you very much for listening and for allowing us to share what we are currently doing in Southeast Asia. And I wish everyone would have a pleasant and productive day. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ethel, for being with us and for preparing this video just in case connectivity fails. So one of the many challenges we're discussing here today. And
hard for the past week.
And thank you for bringing the issue of equity and inclusion, which is a very important one in thinking our strategies to reach all of the groups that are usually harder to reach, so that they are not left behind. Thank you, Ethel, for that. We're running short in time. It's been a lot of very interesting presentations. So I will just have one question for the presenters and one question for the panel. And I would ask you to please, if you could address the questions, I will be calling you to address them. And I will, of course, be telling you the question now. So if you could do it, please, in 2 minutes. Just we don't have much time, but we would like to address some of the issues that we've heard in the different chat rooms. So I will begin with one that has to do with the challenges of the Global Teacher Campus in terms of the connectivity, in terms of the possibility of reaching marginalized populations. And there, Boren, I would give you the floor, please.
Thank you, Carlos. Of course, connectivity is a major challenge, but I think, first of all, through the coalition, we have been able to address some of those challenges. To give an example, for example, in Senegal, we have worked with the colleagues in Microsoft to develop and support the Ministry of Education to develop their online platform to train teachers. But we also worked with Huawei to provide devices to master trainers to equip them with the right resources. So there are possibilities through the coalition. Of course, it's not everywhere and it's not possible every time, but we are working with the Global Education Coalition members to support also connectivity. But I would like to say that as we have managed for the learners to find a mix of tech solutions, we will have to do it for the teachers. To give an example, in some countries, they use it radio and TV, but they use it also WhatsApp to communicate. They use it SMS to engage with the learners. That's what we will be doing. They use it hotspot to engage with the online and offline learning. That's what we'll be doing. We'll be able also to find innovative and creative solutions. There are problems, there are challenges, we'll make it.
Thank you very much, Boren. I will continue, and this question will be for the rest of participants. I'm trying to bring together many questions that have been raised in the chat, and it has to do with the different experiences that you've mentioned, and how do they help teachers situate, contextualize e-learning content, or ensure the continuity of the relational aspect of teaching and learning that is usually something that is constrained to live face-to-face spaces. So I will begin with Michela. 2 minutes, please.
Thank you. I think that with the experience of the teacher training courses that we've had, we've seen that it is important to leverage on the instruments that are already in use by the teachers. Facebook, what Boran was mentioning, Facebook, WhatsApp, the tools that are already used every day and with which the teachers are familiar. And I think there is
I think we lost Michela.
Okay.
No, she's there. I think we lost Carlos. Go ahead, Michela. Go ahead.
Yeah. No. Okay. No, I was just saying that that it is important to use intelligently and for the purpose of education the tools that are already used every day and with which the teachers are already familiar. And I think that is the key that we've seen also in our teacher training program, because when you add new levels of complications and complexity, then it becomes more difficult. So I think there are instruments that are already there, so let's use them and let's try to steer them to the goals of increasing the capacities of teachers. Over.
Thank you very much, Michela. Cristobal, same question, please.
So almost 20 years ago, the MIT released the open courseware, and we thought that when we would have high quality contents available, we wouldn't need to be worried anymore. And then after a number of years, we realized that the quality has to be contextually relevant, meaning that it has to be meaningful. He has to present examples that really make click in the people when you talk about that. So we can have access to high quality of content, but if they're not connected with what the realities in the context, we're not going to get that far. So therefore, it's super important, particularly in the pandemic, to prioritize which are the critical contents, the core subjects, the foundational knowledge, and design, exchange, produce repositories. That is an opportunity for building communities of practice in which teachers share what they are using, but particularly translating external contents to the local ones. And the other element that is really relevant here is the language. We have a massive inequality amongst many languages in the countries. So we have to work not only in ensuring the contents are available, but they will be also available for those countries, for those languages that might not be the minority. So the bottom line is communities of practice in which we are regularly sharing, curating, and improving the quality of resources available.
Thank you very much, Cristobal. But Maurice, you have the floor.
Me. Basically, my colleagues, they address it already, but what I would like to talk about is when technology is made in context to support students to start developing what we call a transformative learning, taking account of a student context. I would like to say that with this global coalition, the Global Teacher Campus is a very good initiative that is going to help in so many ways. But something I would like to say that based on my experience, what we are doing at our university, we realize that we are investing in technology, but there is something that we didn't look in particular, like the connectivity. We provide good systems for the student. We provide them good devices, but we forget to analyze where they are currently when we talk about the network coverage. Network coverage is playing a big role to to explain how students will be able to access the content that we provide them, also the type of devices they are using. So here we are talking about to try to find ways we can develop offline systems. So we came up with some solutions that we'll discuss maybe in other forums, where students who cannot access the information on the learning management system, we receive packages in offline where they can exactly do the same thing, but when it comes to report back to the teacher, the offline will provide the feedback to the teacher what the student was busy doing. So connectivity is very important. Good. Of course, content is important as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maurice. Paul, 1 minute to you, please. Your microphone is muted.
Okay, now I'm done. Okay, thank you. The most critical skill for me to help the teachers deal with connectivity is to really build in them the competency to transform content into different presentation platforms, so that where one could use a radio, let one do it. Where one could use an offline kind of do that. And the other thing is helping teachers realize that they are the most resourceful people when they work as colleagues. Collegiality, supporting each other and coaching, because every other teacher has got a different skill that could come into use by others, and that is the best way. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. And these are some of the issues that Joel, Christina, and Ethel have addressed. So you have one final minute in that particular order if you want to add anything. Joel, please.
Just quickly, I think we need definitely to move away from the idea that we need to train teachers in the use of technologies. The focus should be pedagogy and how these technologies are an instrument or a tool to achieve their goals and empowering them to keep learning. That's, yeah.
Thank you very much, Joel. Christina.
Thank you. I echo everything that everyone has said. I think really the biggest thing we can do is make sure that we're meeting our educators where they're at and supporting our educators and helping them how to see the opportunity that the technology can assist them in doing the important work they do even better. And if we can do that, I think educators will rally behind and take advantage of the opportunity. And so I would just say, let's support our educators. Let's understand where they're at. And let's partner with our educators to understand what their needs are so we can do a great job.
Thank you very much, Christina. And last but not least, Ethel, please.
So what we have learned from this current crisis or pandemic is that teachers are not only leading in classroom, but they also lead in school. They also lead in, community partnership, because they need to have more resources for them to deliver their lessons and classes. So what we can see from the attributes of teachers right now is that they have unconditional love and passion for their students. They have to make sure that the context is there, that they're able to develop synchronous as well as asynchronous learning, and to be able to respond to the times and the situation. That's to be agile most of the time. So in Southeast Asia, not all have connectivity. Like for example, 40% in Myanmar, or 60% Indonesia, 88% Singapore. So our region is varied in terms of connectivity. So that we need to be using flexible learning modalities, hybrid learning, and whatever. So ministers now are delivering modules to the students who are in the disadvantaged and remote areas. That can be done. So not all can be by Wi-Fi or mobile connectivity. So every country has a different response, and we need to really look at the context where they're coming from. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ethel. I would like to thank you, all panelists and discussants, for being with us and participating and joining the coalition and the Global Teacher Campus. There's a number of things that have been said that you have summed up very well. So I will not take much more time to do that. Just to thank you and to thank all of our viewers in the YouTube channels, in the Zoom channels, for participating with us. Without much further ado, and with the challenge of time, I would give the floor back to Boren for some closing remarks of this webinar and the week of webinars that we've been celebrating for World Teachers Day. So Boren, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Carlos, and bravo to you for navigating us and navigating the time for the webinar. As you said, I wanted to conclude this week of celebration. We have selected the theme of teacher leadership because we have seen that teachers led during the crisis and they are leading when we are reopening schools. As Paul was referring, teachers lead because they are innovating, they are taking initiative, but because so they work collegially, they work in a community, and they engage in their communities. So it's very important that we say thank you to teachers, thank you again for teachers, thank you again for teachers. But the Global Teacher Campus is about empowering teachers. We would like to work with our partners. We had the opportunity to listen to some of them. We would like to call to the Global Education Coalition partners interested in investing in teacher training to join us. It's about leaving no one behind among teachers. We would like to equip them with the right skills. So thanks again to all colleagues, and happy World Teacher Day. Happy weekend to all of you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you
Bye.
very much, Carlos.
Thank you very much, colleagues.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, thank you. Do we need to stay on?
I don't think we do. I think we're off now, right?
Okay.
No, thank you very much.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, colleagues. Bye.